tuned in to Paranormal TV Network, and you're listening to Haunted Moments, and I am your host, Reverend Dr. Theresa F. Koch. St. Louis Cathedral. New Orleans has a haunted tale to tell when it comes to actual ghost stories, history, and hauntings. Here in the city that care has forgotten, people sometimes treat these haunted New Orleans ghost stories just too casually, because ghosts and their stories are so much a part of this culture. Some New Orleans ghost stories are widely known and accessible to curiosity seekers. Others are merely whispered tales kept discreetly and among the locals only. Visitors come from all over the world to view the splendor that is the great triple-spired St. Louis Cathedral with its view of Jackson Square and the New Orleans riverfront. But what most do not realize is that, like a great old dame of New Orleans, St. Louis Cathedral knows how to keep its secrets. More than this, it knows when to reveal more than a glimpse of history and mystery, for St. Louis Cathedral is among the most haunted destinations in haunted New Orleans. St. Louis Cathedral is one of New Orleans' most notable haunted landmarks. This revered building, with its soaring triple spires, towers high above the old New Orleans French Quarter. It is the oldest church in Louisiana and one of the oldest established churches in the Americas. The building standing here today is the third erected on this spot. The first was destroyed by a hurricane in 1722, the second by fire in 1788, and the cathedral was rebuilt in 1794. The central tower was later designed by Henry S. Latrobe, and the building was remodeled and enlarged between 1845 and 1851. St. Louis Cathedral has stood a witness to the most of the famous and infamous events that have shaped the Crescent City in the years since its founding. Many feel that St. Louis Cathedral is truly the heart of this most haunted city of the Deep South. New Orleans have continuously worshipped in churches on this site of what is now St. Louis Cathedral since 1727. The site was originally designated for a place of worship a half a dozen years earlier, in 1721, by a French engineer. The new parish church was thus perhaps the first building in New Orleans of brick between post construction, an effective method of building that continued to be used in Louisiana until the middle of the 19th century. Dying on June 21, 1726, before his church was fully completed, in his will he requested that he be buried within the unfinished building, a request presumably granted. During the succeeding 6 decades, those who worshipped within its walls, including the likes of French governors and Spanish governors in this first little church, were baptized the children of the colonists and the children of slaves. Here were married the lowly and the high-born, and through its doors were born the mortal remains of the faithful for the brutal rites of Holy Mother Church on the last journey to the little cemetery on St. Peter's Street. This little cemetery, the first burial ground of record in the city, was located at St. Peter and Burgundy Streets in the French Quarter. Burials in St. Peter's began in 1721 and continued until 1800. Burials were below ground, and space was reserved for the clergy and the wealthy and distinguished of the city. The cemetery remained a primal burial spot for many years until finally it was simply filled to capacity and has long since been built over. Occasional street repairs and architectural renovations in the area of the old cemetery have turned up bones and other artifacts that have fascinated local archaeologists and historians, as well as spirit investigators of the like. A collection of items, including remnants of clothing, jewelry, and grave ornaments from the defunct cemetery, is maintained by a local university. One thing is for certain, however: all of those interred in St. Peter have passed through the doors and under the arches of the church now known as St. Louis Cathedral. On March 21, 1788, the event known as the Good Friday Fire broke out when a candle ignited the lace draperies of an altar in the home of the military treasurer of the colony. Among the buildings burned to the ground were the Church of St. Louis, the priest's residence, and the casa principal. The fire destroyed other homes, buildings, and businesses, and many perished or were injured in the great blaze. A few months later, a hurricane wiped out yet another huge portion of the city, and hundreds more lives were taken. Prior to its destruction in the Great Fire of 1788, St. Louis itself was often the final resting place of many of the New Orleans, most of them wealthy or in some way connected with the founding of the city of New Orleans. A short excerpt of the list of the dead interred within the great cathedral reads like a who's who of a prominent family of the era. With so many burials, it really is no wonder that such a wide array of ghosts have been reported haunting the marble aisles and alcoves of St. Louis Cathedral over the years. Nearly a year lapsed before the charred remains of the church were cleared away and construction of the new church began in 1789. More than 5 years later were to pass before the new church was completed in December 1794. You're tuned in to Paranormal TV Network, and you've been listening to Haunted Moments, and I am your host, Reverend Dr. Theresa F. Koch.